Most gardens produce for 8 to 10 weeks. Then they sit empty for 8 months while you're back at the grocery store buying the same vegetables you could be growing. That's not a gardening problem. That's a design problem. Your garden isn't underperforming because you're a bad gardener. It's underperforming because it's built to run one production cycle when it should be running 3. I know this because I ran a summer-only garden for probably 5 years before I figured out what I was doing wrong. Every October, I'd pull the dead tomato plants, look at the empty beds, and think, well, that's it until spring. And it never occurred to me that it didn't have to be that way. Here's what changed. I stopped thinking about planting season and started thinking about production waves. Your garden can produce food every single month of the year. January, March, October, December, all of it. But it requires understanding how 3 separate growing seasons overlap to create continuous production. This is the same system small-scale market growers use to stay profitable year-round. This is how they turn a quarter acre into a living, not through magic, through structure. Most gardeners think there are 2 seasons, growing season and winter, but there are actually 3 distinct production seasons operating on completely different calendars. Season 1 is the cool season, March through May, then again September through November. Air temperatures between 40 and 70 degrees. These are crops that thrive in cool weather and actually suffer in heat. Season 2 is the warm season, June through August. Air temperatures are 70 to 90 degrees. These crops need heat and will sit dormant or die in cool weather. Season 3 is the cold protection season, December through February. Air temperatures below 40. Cold-hardy crops planted in fall keep producing with minimal protection. They don't grow much, but they don't die either. These seasons don't replace each other. They run at the same time. And that's where you get food coming out of the ground continuously instead of in one big burst. The pattern most gardeners follow is to finish one season, then start the next. Plant in spring, harvest in summer. Done. The garden sits empty 9 months. That was my pattern for years, and every spring I'd be excited to start again, completely forgetting that I could have been eating from that same space in December and January. What actually works? You're always running 2 seasons at once. One season is producing food right now, the other is getting established for later. April and May are the first overlap phase. Cool season crops planted in March are producing lettuce, peas, radishes, spinach. You're eating from your garden. At the exact same time, warm season crops go in the ground. Tomato transplants after last frost, bean seeds direct, cucumber and squash are establishing. A productive spring garden with a gardener working among mature cool season vegetables and newly planted warm season seedlings. You're harvesting from one season while building the next. July and August are the second overlap phase, and this is the one that took me the longest to actually execute. Your summer garden is at peak production. Tomatoes heavy, beans constant, cucumbers every other day. You're so focused on harvesting and preserving that planting more stuff is the last thing on your mind. But that's exactly when cool season crops for fall need to go in. Broccoli transplants, carrot seeds, lettuce again. If you miss that timing, you miss fall completely. And a quick question for you. Have you ever missed that July timing and paid for it in October? Drop a comment and tell me what crop you forgot to start. I promise you're not the only one. For years, I'd get to October, realize my mistake, and do the same thing again the next year. That's the pattern I had to break. October and November are the third overlap phase. Fall cool season crops producing. Broccoli heading up, carrots sizing, lettuce abundant. Meanwhile, you're preparing for the cold protection season. Heavy straw over root crops, fabric over cold hardy greens, deciding what stands through winter and what gets harvested before a hard freeze. 3 overlapping phases. That's what eliminates the gap. Now here's where I see most people lose production. They plant everything at once. All the lettuce goes in one day in April. It produces for 3 weeks in May. Dies from heat. That bed sits empty until someone thinks to plant something else. I watch neighbors do this every year. The pattern I use now is built on 2 things. First, stagger plantings of the same crop. Don't plant all your lettuce on one day in April. Plant a new section every 2 weeks from March through May. Same with beans. Instead of one big planting Memorial Day weekend, plant a section every 3 weeks from late May through mid-July. This changes the harvest from 50 heads of lettuce on Tuesday that you can't possibly eat to fresh lettuce available every single day for 2 months. Second,
The moment a crop is done, something else goes in that exact space. Not next weekend, that day, or within 3 days maximum. Peas finish late June, cucumbers on the same trellis that week. Lettuce dies from heat in late May, beans in that bed within 3 days. Summer squash killed by frost in October, garlic in that space before month's end. Every empty bed is lost production. This was hard for me at first because it requires planning ahead. You need those cucumber transplants ready when peas finish. You can't figure it out later. But once you build this habit, you start getting 3 crops from the same square footage in 1 year. There's another thing most people don't even think about: the gaps between crops. Peas finish in late June, but beans don't start producing until mid-July, 3-week gap. Summer crops die in mid-October, but fall brassicas planted in August won't be ready until late September, another gap. Fast crops fill these gaps, vegetables that go from seed to harvest in 30 to 45 days. Radishes, arugula, baby lettuce, turnips for greens. They're the buffer between main crops. 3 weeks between peas and beans? Plant radishes, ready in 25 days. 4 weeks between summer dying and fall maturing? Seed arugula, harvestable in 30 days, even in cool weather. One bed can produce spring lettuce, then radishes, then beans through summer, then arugula can fall and winter kale. 5 harvests from the same 4x8 bed. And those fast crops are often the most valuable. Fresh radishes in late June when nothing else is ready, you'll actually eat those. Arugula in October when summer's done but fall stuff isn't ready, that's dinner. Stop for a second. If this sounds more complicated than what you're doing now, it's because you've been planting crops instead of designing production. Those aren't the same thing. One gives you tomatoes in August, the other gives you food all year.
The difference between a 6-month garden and a 12-month garden isn't climate or luck, it's protection. And I'm not talking about expensive infrastructure. I'm talking about $50 worth of fabric and some straw. Spring. Lightweight fabric over early plantings protects from late frost and lets you plant 2 to 3 weeks earlier. Those extra weeks mean earlier harvest and more total production time. Summer. Shade fabric over lettuce prevents heat death and extends cool season crops 3 to 4 weeks into early summer. Fall. Row fabric over brassicas protects from early frost and extends harvest 4 to 6 weeks later. Winter. 6 to 8 inches of straw over root crops keeps the ground from freezing solid. Lightweight row fabric costs about $50. Straw costs $20 per bale. Simple wooden cold frames can be built for under $100. The return on investment is insane. Here's the shift that made everything else make sense. You don't have one garden. You have 2 completely separate gardens sharing the same space but operating on different calendars. The cool season calendar runs spring production, fall planting and transplants, fall harvest, and winter maintenance. The warm season calendar start transplants indoors, establish the garden after frost, peak production through summer, and final harvest before frost kills everything. They work together, but they're independent systems. Let me be realistic about what this actually looks like. Winter, you're not getting abundance. You're not picking tomatoes in January. What you get is fresh kale, collards, leeks, and the ability to dig carrots and beets from covered beds. Fresh ingredients for winter cooking, when everything at the store has been shipped 2,000 miles. And that fresh kale in January tastes better than any kale you'll grow in summer. Cold makes it sweeter. Spring, high production of greens, peas, radishes, early brassicas, while summer crops establish but don't yet produce. Summer, peak abundance, tomatoes, beans, cucumbers, squash, preserving, freezing, storing for winter. Fall, second peak abundance, fall brassicas, root crops, greens without heat pressure. And if this whole thing falls apart anywhere, it falls apart in July. Miss that timing and you've got nothing for fall and winter. That's why I treat this as a calendar system with non-negotiable dates now. I start fall broccoli transplants in early July whether I feel like it or not. I put those reminders in my phone, not suggestions, appointments. You don't need to run the full system year 1. Start with the summer to fall overlap phase. This is the easiest entry point. This year, early July, start broccoli and cabbage transplants indoors. Early August, direct seed carrots and lettuce where spring crops finished. When frost kills your tomatoes in October, you'll have fall crops already producing. The garden season extended by 2 months. That single overlap phase takes you from 3 to 4 months of production to 6 to 7 months. Next year, add the spring to summer overlap phase. By year 3, you're running the full system and producing food 9 to 10 months out of 12. Same dirt, same effort, structured differently. And once you see your garden as 3 overlapping production seasons instead of 1 planting season, you can't unsee it. Most gardens are seasonal projects. This one is infrastructure. And before you go, if you had to fix just one phase this year, spring, summer, or fall, which one would it be? Tell me below. I'm curious what season gives you the most trouble.